All right. Hi, everybody. We're all here except for Chelsea. She's coming in by Zoom. It is 6:32, and I'm calling the Select Board meeting to order on March 21st. Okay, so as always, we're starting off with public comment for anybody who wants to talk to us about things not on the agenda. 3 minutes max. I don't think we've got anybody. Raise their hand. Okay, so we're going to keep going. So we're going to start with 2 poll hearings. Mr. Purple.
Members of the board, first poll hearing this evening, the Southborough Select Board shall hold a public hearing Tuesday, March 21st, 2023 at 6:30 PM in the McAuliffe Hearing Room at the Southborough Townhouse, 17 Common Street, Southborough, Mass. To consider a petition by Mass Electric Company and Verizon New England to install underground facilities on Meadow Lane. Meeting may also be listened to or viewed by the public through a link located at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings.
Thank you. Okay, so who do we have here from National Grid?
Yeah.
Hi, my name's
Hi,
Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Marks. I'm from National Grid.
All right, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are ready to talk about the request for the Meadow Lane installation.
Yep. It just looks like they are putting an underground service to a handhole for a new service at 20 and 22 Meadow Lane in Southborough from an existing joint-owned pole at pole 8.
Simple as that?
Yep.
Okay. So the owner of either one or both is here, and he's told me he
Okay.
has no issue with this, and he's still confirming that he has no issue with that. Anybody
Okay.
else have a question? Okay. All right, so I'm going to make a motion to close this hearing.
Second?
Okay, all in favor? Well, Chelsea's not here, so we've got to be careful, so let's do a roll call vote.
Yep.
Okay, Chelsea, can you hear us?
I can.
Okay, so Chelsea?
Aye.
Andrew? Aye. Sam?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Cook is aye. 5-0 to close the whole hearing for Meadow Lane. Thank you.
Do you want to take a motion now to?
Yeah. Okay, now the motion is
To
to approve the request by National Grid and Verizon to put the box in at 20 and 22 Meadow Lane.
Second?
Okay, roll call vote. Chelsea?
Aye.
Andrew? Aye. Sam?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Cook is aye, so 5-0 to approve that one. Mr. Purple?
Southborough Select Board shall hold a public hearing Tuesday, February 28th. This is a continuation, so whether you want me to read the hearing notice again, we continue this from a prior meeting.
Go ahead and read it.
Public hearing Tuesday, February 28th, to be continued to this evening, 6:30 PM, McAuliffe Hearing Room, Southborough Townhouse, 17 Common Street, Southborough, Mass. To consider a petition by Mass Electric Company and Verizon New England Incorporated to install one joint-owned pole on Brigham Street to service a home at 8 Brigham Street. The meeting may also be listened to or viewed by the public through a link located at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yep, this one's pretty simple too. We're just adding another pole onto pole 2, which will be pole 3, to feed a new house at 8 Brigham Road. The pole will have a guy wire on it because it's the end of a line. And that's pretty much it.
Simple as that?
Simple as that.
Okay, one of the questions that always gets asked with new poles is sidewalk. Sam, it's not relevant here?
I have looked at it, and the sidewalk is not relevant here, so I'll pass on that. Thank you.
All right. Andrew, any questions? No questions. Lisa?
No, thank you.
Chelsea?
Nope.
Okay. All right, so I will make a motion to close the poll hearing for 8 Brigham Street.
Second?
Okay, roll call vote. Chelsea?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Lisa? Aye. Cook is aye. So the hearing is closed. So now I'll make a motion to approve installing the pole on 8 Brigham Street by Grid and Verizon.
Second?
All in favor? Chelsea?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Cook is aye, 5-0. All right, 2 poll hearings done. Check.
I told Rebecca she's all set.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so very quick chair's report. The advisory's written the report that they're required by law to write. It's a good report. They'll have it posted, I think, tomorrow on the town website.
It's already on.
It's all on? Good. It's a good report. Everybody should read it. They did a really good job. So I just wanted to update everybody on any difference in their votes than ours. Budget, we're all simpatico, so that one's done. They are going to wait to town meeting for both the tree and scenic roads, so I haven't voted on that one. They are not going to support the Algonquin debt article. They voted on that one. Tim Martell was in favor, so 1-4. It's not that they are not in favor of the project, they actually are. They are just trying to make a point that they wish we had tried harder to use more CPA funds as far as the project goes and tried to get the surtax passed first before we did it. So I'm not sure what they're going to say at town meeting, but that's the one difference there as far as that goes. Other than that, pretty much the same. So, okay, so again, I don't know what they're going to say about that one. They really do want the project to go forward. They just want more CPA funds to be used. Okay, anybody else have anything, members report? Mr. Purple?
So just a few items, quick items. The first one, obviously, spring has sprung, as of Monday, and golf will spring as of Thursday, when the rain is supposed to be coming in. So the golf course does open this Thursday, March 23rd, for the golf season. You can go online and book your tee times now. There seem to be plenty available when I took a look earlier in the week.
But that's early, that's great.
It is, they always do have we always do get some revenue, not a whole lot, but a little bit coming through in March. I talked to Bill Harrison briefly. The golf course, came through the winter in really good condition. There really wasn't any damage from any of the winter turf grass diseases that they see sometimes. The tee construction project has started already on the 6th and 7th hole, so they're excited. That's going to be completed sometime next month, weather depending in that, but it's great that they got to jump on that as quickly as they could. They're expecting there to be minimal disruption of play from the project, and they're looking forward to a good season. There will be some point, hopefully within the first several months of the season, where we may have to shut down for a day or a portion of the day when the paving of John Wilson Drive and the parking lot occurs. But again, I think everyone's been looking forward to that improvement, so they'll be okay shutting down briefly just to allow that to happen. So that is excellent news. When you drive into the parking lot, you may notice, especially at this time of day and night, you've got the 3 cranes in the back of the townhouse. If you come in during the day, you will see them actively at work. On the western side of the building at this point, work has actively begun on this building, which is very exciting. Some of you may recall, either on this board or other boards, we had an opportunity to have this conversation, I think, 9 years ago, when we thought there was an opportunity to get the windows done and everything in this building, and then that opportunity disappeared. Terry hasn't yelled at me for my mic not being on, but am I that loud, Terry? Sorry. And so the work has begun in earnest. They are going to begin taking the windows out here in the meeting room. Now, the storms will be left in. So, so we'll be managing any heat loss, so to speak, in that. And they're going to start on the 2nd floor first, then we'll be working down to the 1st floor. Doors are going to be replaced. The one thing I do want to point out, a lot of the shrubbery around the building is really not in great condition, and the staging and everything else is really going to damage it. The intent is to take the majority of it out and replace it with, I think as the architect on the project, historically or period accurate type of bushes and flowers and things like that around. And so I just wanted you to be aware, if it starts looking a little sparse when they come around to this side of the building, you won't notice it on the west side of the building because you've got the HVAC units, the condenser units outside and the smaller lower bushes. I think the intention too is to make sure you'll notice on, especially this side of the building, that the bushes have started to come up over the windows. and we're doing all this work to the windows and bringing them back and restoring everything. We want to keep things down a little bit lower so that you really get to see, you know, the building a little bit more, and not have it cover up the windows. It's always nice to see the people inside. So that's working, and, you know, weather dependent, this could be, you know, something possibly, I don't want to set expectations unrealistically, but weather depending, and if they continue to work at the rate that they have been, this could be a project that could be done by the end of this construction season, so by later this fall, which would really be exciting.
Really? That's great.
There's a
I thought it
possible,
was-
look, I don't want to go out on a limb like, you know, when you asked Melissa how much the Breakneck Hill was going to cost, and she gave you a number, and then after much review and investigation, you got a different number. But there is the possibility that we could be, you know, complete or close to complete by the end of this construction season. One other piece, if you recall back, we talked a little bit about LED streetlights, and National Grid is working to get some of the different wattage streetlights up so the board can get a comparison versus the different wattage. The storm that we had the other day kind of set them back a little bit. Bob Moran has been, you know, trying to expedite these things for us. He does a nice job. He's the community rep for National Grid. I've also, Sam, been playing phone tag with him to have another conversation and get back in the discussion about the parcel downtown and talk about that. And so that is on my radar as soon as we connect.
So you're going to talk to him about that too?
About that too, because he'll help to liaison those discussions and everything. He's been excellent. Bob's been with us the whole time I've been here, but I've known him and also in other communities in the area. So he does a nice job helping to find out, you know, what the communities need and then helping to facilitate those answers. He was very helpful in getting three-phase power into the site for public safety as quickly as we did, which was very beneficial. So he's been a good partner for us.
Because, you know, we can't lose track of the fact that ARPA, it's got to be committed by the end of '24. So we've got, you know, we got to do something soon as
Right.
far as that money goes.
Right.
One way or
So
the other.
anyway, so the lighting is coming. There were some lights, John told me this, John Parent told me this late in the day. There were some lights that came, but they may have been incorrectly marked at the factory. So we're trying to, so there are a couple that if you drive by, you're like, that kind of looks like an LED light. Probably is, but it may not, you know, what we would tell you we expect the wattage to be may not be exactly what it is because they've been having trouble with the factory not marking them correctly. So once we get everything straightened out, once we're sure what's what and where it is, we will provide a list so that you can go around and you can get a sense of, you know, how bright these lights are and you know, again, it's up to the board, you know, as to which wattage you want to go with or you feel most comfortable with. And it may be different in different locations depending on the density of the housing.
Mark,
Yes.
are we on track to get the 1,000-watt sample outside Mr. Dennington's house?
Yes, we do need to remove the blinders on the side so it goes out into the windows a little bit more. But yes, we're just about there. So
Excellent, thanks.
So
the
keep
living
pushing.
on the sun, you know, wattage I think is what they have. So
Well, keep pushing, because he told us February, and I know they messed up and put 10-watt lights
Yep.
up, but, you know, this is going to save money, so the sooner we get it done, the better off we're going to be.
absolutely, so I think once we have something to look at, once you make a decision which way you want to go, then it's just a matter of getting them in here and getting them changed out. So absolutely,
All right. Is that it?
that's it.
Oh, good report, all good stuff. But, you know, the townhouse is really exciting, right? It's the pictures that he showed us, and that was a great email that John Parent sent as far as how it's going to go. They've told everybody how it's going to go, it's going to be staged, so it sounds like he's got it totally under control, like usual.
I think the one thing, I just want to point out one other thing, with all of this going on in the townhouse and everything going on around outside, Facilities is holding off on demoing the other bathroom until they get away from this side of the building, because we need another dumpster over here, and there's just no way to try to do that. So once they get off of that side of the building and move on to the eastern side of the building and everything, I think that, that Facilities will get on that. But I just want you to know that there's a little bit of we've got too many things going on at the same time in the same location.
All right, consent agenda, we've got only two things. We don't have March 7th minutes, so we're just
Right,
going to look
so
at
table those.
February 28th, and we've got the the truck exclusion for Flag Road. So anybody want to hold either one of those?
I want to hold the minutes.
Minutes too, yeah.
All right, and then I want to hold the truck exclusion, because I think we need to laud this and make sure everybody understands what happened here. Okay, so start with the minutes. Who's got corrections? Chelsea?
Yep, line 122, where it says the board agreed to move forward with pursuing the project. I would say exploring the project.
Okay.
That's it.
I have a spelling correction on line 115, aesthetics is not spelled correctly.
Yep. Okay,
And I have two small ones on line 42. I think it should read average tax bill, not average tax rate. The rate's going to go down, the average tax bill is going to go up by these numbers. And then line 62, typo, Andrew Pfaff's name is misspelled.
which one? What line?
62.
Yes, it is.
That was a pretty good attempt, though.
Well, it does,
Close. Needs two more Fs.
P-F-A-F-F. Okay, Lisa?
None.
Okay, and we did Chelsea's. Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from February 28th, 2023 as amended.
Second?
Roll call vote. Chelsea?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Lisa? Aye. Cook is aye, 5-0. Okay, truck exclusion. So, yay, we have, surprisingly, Flag Road approved as a truck exclusion road. So regardless of what they said to us, we don't do ordinances in Southborough, so Mark has checked with them. The letter we have in front of us is what they want as far as what needs to go back to them. Jim is going to attest to it, so we're going to sign it tonight and send it back. Mark checked. When we sent in the application, we said that the alternate route was Deerfoot. That's why Deerfoot's in this letter, because it's in the application too. DOT as far as the exclusion goes, so that's why it's there, okay? So, it's done.
Yeah, I just want to point out too that, and I want to thank Melanie Otska in my office, who helped to collaborate with Jim's office a little bit and go back and take a look at the other votes that were done and the other things that were on record for any heavy vehicle exclusions that we've put in place before. They all look like this, and they all did recognize what is the alternate route. So we're not doing anything different than we had done before. So, but I just wanted to thank them for doing that, and Jim for coming and hanging around, even though I think he was coming anyway, just so he can make sure that he attests the signatures tonight.
Yeah, and thank Karen Galligan and VHB for getting this done also.
Exactly, yeah, no, it was a little bit of a long process, but the wheels of government unfortunately move a little slow.
They do, we know that, don't we? So, what do we do to mark a road as a HVE road, so that people actually know that's what it is? I know your navigation systems, I guess, are supposed to tell truck drivers, right?
Eventually.
Eventually.
Yeah,
Right.
that takes a while to do, but there are signs, there are signs, a truck picture and a red line through it kind of thing at each.
But is it our job to get those signs?
DPW.
Okay,
Yes.
So we might want to, make sure that
Sure.
we get that done too, right?
Abdul needs to know that.
And then how does it get into the navigation systems, et cetera?
I think we can actually proactively contact the navigation people. There are, I think, 2 or 3 major vendors for that stuff, so
DOT, I bet, knows how to do that. You would think that they
I
would.
think, yeah. So
I'm sure they've gotten that
we
question
should reach
before.
out and do
So we
that.
ought to check to make sure that we do what we can to make it as effective as possible, so trucks don't go, oop, didn't know.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So, one thing we had kind of talked about a long time ago is adding a fine, putting a sign up. And Mark, could we find out what would be required for us to do that? We had talked about putting a fine in case a truck does come down there.
Sure.
Like, I'm talking semi-trucks.
Yep.
Does go down there because we have the ability, I'm remembering from the prior conversations, to put up a sign, the $1,000 fine, $500 fine, might be an additional deterrent for a truck driver to say, well, I screwed up, I'll just go anyway.
Yeah.
So that might be something we want to explore.
I agree, good idea. And we also can't forget, we're still not done with this. Remember, the study came back with 4 roads, Acre Bridge, Johnson, Oak, and Flag, right? I'm not as concerned about Johnson and Acre Bridge, but Oak gets 50 trucks a day. right? I mean, 50. And I now watch, you know, I'm much more cognizant of what goes up, because I sit at the stoplight a lot going to and from work, and there is a lot of trucks that make that turn and go up Oak and come back down and make that turn onto Route 9. And sometimes you're going pretty fast when coming down that hill. So I think we've got to keep going as far as trying to figure out what to do for Oak. It's not easy because of the Ashland problem. But I don't think we should drop this. I think we should still try to see if there's not something we do, talk to Ashland and see if we can't do something. Now, remember too, that the alternate route would be to go Southville up 85, right? And we think we're gonna do a big Corderville Road project too, so, maybe as far as thinking about all this, we really don't, because I mean, 50 trucks is a lot. And there's a, you know, there are a lot of houses on Oak too. They're pretty close to the road, so I don't wanna drop it till we really have done everything we can to see if we can figure it out. All right, that's a good one. Okay, so, I will make a motion to approve the truck exclusion on Flag Road.
Second?
Okay, roll call vote. Chelsea?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Lisa? Aye. Cook is aye, 5-0. So we're going to sign it right now. So Chelsea, we're signing this tonight.
You can have, can have her sign it when she's able to come in the next couple of days.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, so that's being passed down. So we're going to start talking about and before someone corrects me, I'm going to say it both ways. Either the Tricentennial Committee or the Tercentennial Committee. So it's either TRI or TER, and both are acceptable. And if we have any of our English professors watching us, like Kevin Miller or Marguerite Landry, feel free to correct us, but I looked at Webster's, and they are synonyms for each other, so I think that they're used interchangeably. But I do think tonight we should decide which one we're going to use so we don't get confused. So we've got on the agenda TER, we've got on the memo TRI. There you go. All right,
I vote for try, but
I do too, because I can say it easier. So I'm with you on the try.
try means three.
Yeah, it does. I thought it was a misspelling for a long time, and then I looked and I thought, no, it's not. No, it's not.
Both work, but
Andrew, what do you think?
Try.
Lisa?
Try.
Chelsea?
Yep, try.
Okay, so we're going to call it the Tricentennial Committee, Tricentennial Celebration, okay? You okay with that? Yes?
Yeah, no, I'm
Okay.
fine with that.
These are major decisions we're making right now, okay? It's kind of nice to make some of these smaller decisions every once in a while. Okay, so Vanessa has worked hard on this charge. She told me that this was one thing that Mr. Healy was very interested in and had asked her to do some research. So she's got a lot of background. So I wanted her to come up tonight and talk to us about what she's done, where she is, and then we decide what we want to decide tonight, and then what we want to decide later.
Thank
Hello.
you. So the charge, of course, is in your packet. This has been floating around for about a year or so, but, you know, we do want to get back to formally adopting the charge and looking at recruiting volunteers to set up the committee. Some, as it's laid out here, would be staff support, and some would be representatives from other boards and committees or community organizations. So I think that's the first piece. You know, some of the other, you know, research we've done over the past year includes looking at how it's been done in other communities and where they've been successful. Most recently, Weston, Maynard, Walpole, Lexington, Westboro. Lexington is actually working on the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Lexington and Concord. So they've done a lot of work already and certainly know how to plan anniversary celebrations. So that's kind of how we arrived at this charge. There's some sample information from the town of Rutland at the end of the charge. So I think that's the first piece, so we can work on recruiting volunteers to bring back to the board. I think once the committee is able to get started, we really want to focus on collecting ideas, you know, from residents and business people in the community, and how do we want to plan this? Is it, you know, one large event, or is it a series of events over the course of the year? And how do we go about funding those events? Is it through a warrant article, which we have not set aside any money at all at this point? Or is it through a combination of public and private donations? Is it a collaboration with other organizations who might help pay for some of these events? So, You know, there's a number of decisions to be made. Some communities do this over 5 or 10 years. We're looking at 1727. It's early July 1727 is the actual anniversary.
Do you have the exact date?
Yes, I believe it's July 6th. Jim sitting behind
It's
me.
July
That's right,
17th.
That's right. What is
July
it?
17th. July
17th?
17th. Yeah.
Close.
There's a specific reason why I know that.
Okay.
In the early, today, I was actually reading the 1827 centennial sermon. There's a number of July dates listed in there as well. So that's kind of where we're very early in a planning stage, but really want to get feedback from the board on how do you want to set up this committee? And do you have any guidelines for the committee on, you know, what you would like to do?
All right, so it seems to me like we probably should start with who's going to be on the committee, right? I think that's a good place to start, and then the rest of it we can flesh out over time.
Well, and how many people, too?
Yeah, how many people, you know, who, do we want specific people from specific committees, and then, you know, several at large? I think we should also ask Mr. Semino to mention this on Saturday, when he's doing his introduction, as far as this is something we're starting to look at, is, you know, raise your hand
Right.
if you're interested. It'd be a good place to advertise this.
Can we do a handout?
We could. All right, so everybody agree, let's start talking about who
Sure.
might be on the, he said no?
No handout.
He's done with handouts?
He ran out of colors.
We stand out in the rain? Okay, so let's start with, I think, kind of the easier part of it, which is who we think should comprise the membership of the committee. Lisa?
So, and Vanessa, thank you for doing all the research on this. I think it's actually been longer than a year. I think you spent quite a bit of time on this, so thank you for that. I think, obviously, a select board member would make a lot of sense, you know, to be able to report back. My only concern is with adding too many committee members to this is, everybody already serves on most boards or committees, already on multiple things, and this might be adding another on a small committee, you know, that may only have 5 people, and 3 or 4 of them are already on something else. So I worry a little bit about that, and I think that there's a lot of good people here in Southborough that are really going to be interested in this. This is not controversial in any way. I think it's something that we can all get behind, and it's a celebration.
Right.
You know, it's a celebration of the history of Southborough. So obviously, I think having a historical member on it makes a lot of sense. A select board member makes a lot of sense as well. I'm just looking here. I don't know so much about recreation. I'm kind of on the fence a little bit on that. I think I'm more interested in getting more citizens at large, new people, that I think this will actually generate a lot of interest for. So, but I think select board is important, and I think, you know, of historical and maybe a veterans.
Sure.
Those would be my top 3, and then, you know, I would be hoping for 3 or 4 citizens at large, you know, depending on what the final number and what everybody else thinks where we would end up.
Okay.
What do you think the number should be?
I'm thinking 7 to 9. 9 is pushing it, but 7 is probably a little bit more comfortable of a number.
We're just having such bad luck with 9. I mean,
I know.
it's just hard. So
I
I
know.
would vote for the 7 before I
Yeah.
would the 9, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to get 9, we know
Yeah.
that. Look what we're going to do tonight, we're going to reduce the committee because they can't get enough people.
Yeah, and then we could always come back, you know, if we put this out and we don't get 4 citizens, then we can lower it, or we can put in some from other, you know, boards or committees as well. But I think it's important to have a good showing, and I think a lot of people are interested in the community. So historical, veterans, and selectmen would be my 3 that I'd
And
like
then
to
4
see.
at large?
4 at large.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's kind of our opening bid here. So anybody want to propose anything different than what Lisa proposed?
I have another comment on it.
Go ahead.
I think that's not a bad number. The concern I have is that, I agree, Kathy, I think there are a number of people who actually would be interested in this. And it seems to me that our experience with large committees has not been great, I think. Particularly, I think of the Master Plan Committee, where we started out with 18 or something like that, and we wound up with I don't know, 7 or 8 or something like that, but it was a great committee because it sort of got winnowed down to the people who were willing to devote the time and to move the process forward very actively. So that was a great thing. So I think you need a core group that actually has people who do have the time and interest to participate, and you don't lose people along the way. And I'm not quite sure how you filter it initially to get that kind of core group. But beyond that, I think it would be wonderful to find a way to actively involve a large variety of people on a more ongoing basis somehow. And I'm not quite sure how you do that. Maybe you have subcommittees or working groups or something that focus on particular pieces of the project. So maybe, for example, maybe you've got one small group of people who work on getting speakers to come in. Let's, invite whoever, the national people or whatever you want to do there, to focus on those pieces that can carry the ball on some of those types of things. Another might be fundraising. I think that it would be great if we could get private sponsorship for some of this. And again, if you have sort of the core committee that moves the process forward, manages it, and then you've got other functions, if you will. You might have, I don't know, 6, 8, 10, whatever, specific functions that need particular support and motivation, and find people to push on those kind of things. That broadens the participation, separates the workload, so you've got more people to do, more hands and feet to actually keep the process moving. So that, to me, seems like a good structure, and I think the core group of 7 is probably a good number operationally.
Okay, so what I got from that, and tell me if I didn't get this, so we have 7 members of the committee that vote, and they stay on. Then we've got this group of functional people that we ask to basically use their expertise to do certain things. They're not going to vote, they'll be ex officio, right? But they will weigh in when they need to for what they're doing. Speakers, so someone who knows how to get speakers, someone who knows how to raise funds, right? And there's plenty of people in Southborough that know how to raise money, right? You just have to get them to do it. What other function?
Celebration planners, for example,
Well,
party
I was
planners.
going to, believe me, that's what I'm going to add, is the
Yeah.
event planners.
Yeah.
There are people who know how to plan events, right?
Yeah.
So get a good event planner that
Yep.
can help us plan,
Yep.
big events.
And maybe, one for music or whatever kind of thing that would be part of the overall celebration. And I'm sure the committee will come up with more, specialties, if you will. But that structure, to me, is a good structure that broadens the participation, but yet doesn't compromise the ability to organize and move forward, so.
Sometimes people, when they know they've got a specific task that is right up their alley, right, are more inclined to participate than just being on a committee generally and having to go to all the meetings, whatever. So I think this is a pretty good way to maybe approach this. But there are, people who know how to raise money, people who know how to put on events, I think would be very helpful with this kind of thing.
Need to
So-
find a group that knows how to give money. That's-
So one of the things, when the International City County Management Association had their national conference in Boston in 2013, I sat on the overall committee to help to organize this, to bring it to Boston, because it's 2,000 to 3,000 people coming into the city. And again, you've got to find things to do. There's an annual 5K. And the committee then assigned responsibilities to each person. Mine, for example, was the 5K. And so I needed to go out and bring people together and do something for that. I had to coordinate that piece. So along with what Mr. Stivers is saying is that you're going to have this core group, and I think they're going to have responsibilities as to your focus is going to be on this piece, your focus is going to be on this piece, and then to determine how that is going to be brought together. So I think the structure you're talking about is something that has worked well in the past in other large-scale things.
Is that it, Sam?
That's it for now.
Andrew?
Actually, I have some follow-up questions, Vanessa. In some of the research that you did, do you know how other towns approach in terms of whether they had a warrant article that funded a budget for the committee, or whether it was all raised through private donations?
It really was a combination, some of that depended on the size of the community, and what kind of business industries did they have in those communities. So it's really been kind of all over the map there.
Okay.
So Andrew, Vanessa and I had already talked about that piece, so I've started a list of potential articles for fall, and I put that on there as a potential article.
Some kind of potential seed money for, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And do you have a sense of how, for an event, well, first off, don't yet have a sense of what the event looks like, but what I kind of envision is, yes, one kind of big celebration in July. I remember Hopkinton had was it 300th anniversary a couple of years ago? I remember they had a big parade in the center of town for that, I think. And how far out in advance do you need to plan an event?
Well,
like
some
that?
of these committees did do this, several years in advance.
Okay.
Some up to, 7 to 10 years in advance for something, much more of a large scale. So I think within 3 years, that's why we're continuing to push, talking about this, informing the committee now, so we can develop, the core group and, the volunteer cores to support, events throughout the year.
I think it would be interesting if you had a, one kind of signature event, and then throughout the year, kind of a series of programming that I think that the library could help with, the historical commission could.
That's something Ryan Donovan and I spoke about
Yeah.
today, and obviously his interest in supporting the work of the committee and with exhibits, with programming, with speaker ideas and so forth.
And then you could have either, I don't know, once a month or every other month, kind of a signature. It could be a musical thing or a lecture, a talk on a topic that's related to the tricentennial. And then, if all that is kind of lined up, it would have to be lined up, significantly advanced. And then this is pitched as kind of a program of different,
And then that
Yeah.
goes into the marketing and communications that, would be spread everywhere.
yes. So that's kind of how I envision it. I definitely think it makes sense to have someone from the Historical Commission on. The library can also contribute a lot, that you can envision as a space where some of these events might be held. And, I'm definitely torn on that. After, like the St. Mark Street Park Working Group, where we voted to have certain representatives of certain committees, and then, sometimes when we do that, we just get some of the same kind of voices who we hear from all the time. And this is something that has the potential to bring in some new people. It also has the potential to bring in some people that, may have volunteered on committees 10 years ago,
Right.
15 years ago, that would be interested in wading back in something that's more, not as controversial as some of the things that the select board and planning board deal with. I know that Mr. Healy seemed very interested.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was
he's
gonna say, maybe
yeah,
we
Marty would be good.
can bring him back.
Yeah,
you
and
know.
I'll say,
Let's
I
have
also
him.
I would be interested in serving on
Yep.
the committee.
The other question was, did you want any ex officio members from the staffing side, or, should the group just turn to, those people when they need
Well,
assistance?
to that point, that's where recreation, I think of who has experience
Sure.
in, like,
Event
Tim
planning,
Davis and the Recreation Commission, they do a great job putting on the Southborough Summer Nights
Yep.
events.
Yep.
They get that down to a T, where they do 4 of them a year, and so we could benefit from some of that expertise.
And if there were a run, as Mark had described in Boston,
Yeah.
he'd be the one to lead that
Yep.
effort too,
Sure.
putting that
Do-
together.
Do we want to list them as an ex officio, though? I mean, I look at Mr. Purple, ex officio on Capitol, and he's at all the meetings. So if it's something that they could just go to Tim and ask questions with, instead of actually making him an ex officio, I would be
The
more,
idea is if you ever ex officio, that person then has to show up at every meeting, and
Yeah,
typically that's what happens, Andrew,
to me,
unfortunately.
that's a functional specialty kind of thing that they draw on. Andrew, to follow up on your year-round point, I think great opportunity to get the schools involved in that.
Yes.
Have
I was
some
gonna say,
educational
private
programming.
and public, so.
Both, that's right, educational
schools, yeah.
programming
Yep.
around the entire year. And maybe, again, have the Historical Commission go out and make presentations to various school groups to reinforce that process. I mean, I think like the Henry Knox Cannon story is a great one that allegedly came through Southborough, and I think there are a lot of stories like that that could be very interesting for many people.
So by then, Mr. Weishan should have his museum up and running too, which should be very nice to be part of this whole thing too. If it comes to fruition like he's envisioned, it's going to be a really nice place, so you'll have that too.
Another thing that I could kind of envision being part of this is, I one time went, like 2 years ago, the Trails Committee sponsored a walk through the area that's owned by DCR that will be the future site of the Peninsula Trail, and there's a ranger from DCR that comes and gives a lecture very expert about the whole history of how the area, land was taken for flooding the reservoirs, and has a lot of old pictures of it. It's very interesting, and that would be another thing that could be a nice segment of this. For that walk, it's limited to a certain number of people, because there's only a certain number of people that can go on this walk all deep into the woods at the same time. But this could be, a version of this could be done without the artificial capacity limit.
Yeah, these are all great ideas. All right, so maybe tonight let's just hone in again on who we think should be on the core committee.
Does Chelsea have any other comments about?
Oh, sorry, Chelsea, I always do this. Sorry, Chelsea.
No, that's okay. I just had a process question. If we were to make the committee 7 people, and let's say one person's in charge of fundraising, but they're going to have 5 or 6 people kind of going out and helping them, how does that work from an open meeting law perspective?
Well, we talked about doing this a couple of different ways. Maybe that's not the way you do that piece of it. You literally have people that are kind of on, the equivalent of an advisory committee, right? On the side that are doing specific things that aren't part of that 7 group. They're not really on the committee, but they have agreed that they're going to do specific things. So obviously, if they're involving the committee, they still have to worry about open meeting law. But if you've got like one person who's been designated to, he said, I'll do, I really know how to fundraise, I will do that piece of it, and they come back and report. So I don't know.
Okay.
To work with the town clerk.
I mean, I agree with Sam that, to have groups of people who are going to focus on certain aspects makes sense. I just want to make sure that logistically that would work.
And really get the businesses in this town involved in this, really get them involved. And, I think that some would really want to. So really work on a way to reach out to businesses to get them involved. So you almost wanted maybe an EDC person on here. I'm sorry, but maybe EDC. Okay, so we said so far, select board, someone with an historical background is what Lisa said. Sam seems to want to pin it down more to historical commission member. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Someone from the veteran, like a Steve or a Dan, right? Veterans group. We said no to rec, other than used him to basically bounce things off of, et cetera. We said no to rec, so, and then 4 at large.
I think it works for now, at least.
And I think if
can
we
always
get
change this. I mean, it's a
more,
start, right?
more interest, then we can always increase the number to
Yeah.
more than 7.
Yeah. So, I mean, Chelsea, this is a start, right? We can be flexible and see how
Right.
things go, and if things need to be changed, we change them.
Yep.
But I still think it's a good idea for Mr. Semino to announce this, that, Select Board is starting to plan the tricentennial and are looking for those that may be interested to join a committee to help us plan that.
So you want us to bring this final charge back to you at your next meeting, or are you comfortable with
Yeah.
as amended?
Why don't you bring it back on the, either the 4th or the 11th, whichever.
Well, there's one part of it that would need some thinking, which is the, the below part where it has a mission statement from what Rutland had, and we need to come up with our own
Yeah.
mission statement.
And
Okay.
one other thing I would suggest as well is to change that the select board will designate a chair. I think that should be up to the committee.
Committee.
Yeah.
You're saying make the Select Board the chair automatically?
No, it just says the select board will designate
Designate.
a chair. We
Okay,
should-
let the committee decide. who
Committee
chooses.
decide,
Okay, fine.
yeah.
So maybe on the first April meeting, we come back, right? We approve the charge, right? So, we know it's flexible. and also try to basically do the mission statement like Rutland did. Get those two things done, then start advertising for members, and just take it as it goes. Once we get the committee, then start filling in all the blanks around it.
Okay.
Okay, everybody agree?
Yep.
So we made the big decision tonight, tricentennial, right?
Good.
So we got that one out of the way.
That's why we get the big bucks.
Thank you again,
Thank
Vanessa.
you, Vanessa.
Sure.
All right, moving on. Okay, this one's easy too. Okay, so just in line with what we're talking about, so the chair of the Southborough Cultural Arts Council has requested that we vote to reduce the number on the committee to 5. What is it now, Jim, 7? Yeah, because they're having trouble with members. They want the quorum to go down to 3. And state law for this type of committee says 5 is fine. You can't go below 5, but 5 is fine. So she has respectfully asked us to please help them out here. Any comment, Chelsea? Was that a no?
I think it was a no.
Okay, all right,
Sorry, I said no.
okay. So
I'm good.
there's a brief no. Andrew,
That makes sense to me.
Sam?
Yeah, it makes sense. I have been attending some of their meetings, and I guess I've been encouraging them to think about being more active, because I remember at times in the past, this group has done some really nice community things. And I think given the change in membership and, again, the small number of members here, they don't have a lot of resources, so they're now back to primarily focusing on distributing the state grant money that comes each year to the committee, and they do a wonderful job of that. But I think they have the potential for doing a lot more, and maybe, again, as part of this tricentennial process, could play a strong role. So I think that I'm fine with 5, but I wouldn't object for them having a budget at some point here to actually go out and do some things. So near term, let's do the 5.
Lisa?
I agree as well.
I do too, but this is, I'm surprised that because I remember, I don't know, it's decades ago, it was very active, right? And so you're right, it's who's on it. This is no knock on who's on it right now. Thank you for being on it. But this town is full of
A lot of artists.
really talented people.
Yeah.
I mean, when we do these fundraisers that we do at the community house where we have all the artists come in and they sell, I mean, there's a lot of them. So, and we got a lot of good musicians. There's just a lot of talent in this town, so this is surprising that we don't do more with this. So we definitely should try to see what we can do to boost this up, but let's at least do what she's asking so that they don't have to worry about not having a quorum.
Can I add one more thing, too?
Sure.
I think prior to COVID, they were pretty active in hosting, wasn't it a karaoke, or they did some night that they did, but prior to COVID. So it might be nice to see them, to get the young people involved again in different things with the arts.
All right, so I will make a motion to reduce the number of members on the Southborough Cultural Arts Council, SCAC, from 7 to 5.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll
Mr.
call.
Haggerty's got a question.
Oh, come on up, Mr. Haggerty.
Is this on? Okay. The second piece of this is they ask that you set the quorum to 3 on this, please. That was part of their request.
So why would the quorum not automatically be 3 if you've got 5 on your membership?
It's not automatic because of the way the state statute is written this, and it gets tricky. Is it the majority of the people that are on the board at the time? If you had 3 people, does it then become 2? And it's tricky, and town council recommends you set it at 3 because you're talking about dispersing funds.
Okay, so 5 members, 3 quorum.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to amend my motion to reduce the membership from 7 to 5 and set the quorum going forward at 3.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Chelsea?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Cook is aye, so 5-0 to approve that, Jim. So will you let Jen Hanson know that we approve this?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, the next one is, Lisa, you want to explain this one?
Sure, I will, thank you. So I am on the Master Plan Implementation Committee as a representative from the Select Board. And one of the things the committee has been doing, one of the first things we do is go before the groups. Each of us have been designated groups that have goals throughout the master plan. And we're just coming up with our end of the first quarter, and where I'm currently not rerunning for my position on the board, I had spoke to Ms. Cook about, it makes sense for me to resign from this and allow another member to come on instead of me starting discussions with groups. It should be the same person that's going to carry it through. So I had spoken to the Chair of Planning Board. They are who appoints for this, and they will put it on the agenda to accept my resignation on April 3rd, but obviously we would need to give a recommendation to them to fill my vacant seat. So the Implementation Committee is meeting next Thursday. I will stay on for that, but my resignation will be effective on 4/3.
All right, very clear. And I believe Mr. Stivers has raised his hand to replace you.
I think
Maybe been drafted, but.
Ms. Braccio raised my hand. I have large shoes to fill here, but as Lisa and I were both involved in the master plan process, I think this makes sense to have someone who has actually been involved in that for the last several years. And I think it's a great project, great group, and doing some important things, so I'm delighted to fill in there.
And definitely large shoes, no joke, seriously. Okay. Chelsea, are you okay with Sam being our recommendation to the planning board? Is she there?
Yes, I'm good, sorry.
All right. Andrew, you okay?
Yes.
So, just to be clear what we're doing tonight, we're voting to recommend Sam as a select board appointee to the planning board. They actually do the appointment. So our job is to recommend to them, and then they take it from there.
Yep.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I'll make a motion for the select board to recommend Mr. Stivers to the select board, to the planning board as our representative on the master plan implementation committee. Second?
I usually second.
Okay, second.
Second.
At least a second. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Chelsea?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Sam?
Abstain.
Lisa?
Aye.
Cook is aye, so 4-0-1. All right, that's done. But seriously, Lisa, thank you for all that. I know that you love that stuff, and you're great at it. Okay, next thing is preparation for town meeting. So we're going to review a couple of the proposed presentations for articles that we're doing. We're going to look at the Hopkinton water connection presentation, and we're going to look at the presentation for Breakneck. The presentation for the park is not ready. You'll see before Saturday, but it's not ready. So that's the two we're going to do tonight. Is John Butler there?
He's not.
He's not?
Nope.
All right, let's start with Breakneck Hill, and I'll text him and see if he's coming. He may think we may be moving faster than he thought we were. Okay, so Sam, we've got the presentation, so you want to just say anything, or you just want comments from us?
A brief comment on the front end, and then happy to take any other comments. I've been working with Melissa Danza on this. She's very helpful in terms of a lot of the details that I didn't have in my memory. And I think that my bottom line on this is I don't think that we want to spend a lot of time overselling or over-communicating on this one. I think it's fairly straightforward. We probably could have gotten here in a much more effective way over the last 40 years, but we are where we are, and we're operating under an administrative consent order from Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. So if we don't meet their timelines now, then they can come in and hire contractors to do this job and send us the bill, get us to pay for it, and there are probably fines involved in that process as well. And so the $2.2 million figure is the high-end estimate from a licensed site professional who surveyed the property. And they've done some test digging on the property. They think they have a pretty good handle on it. But depending on what they find when they go in there, they hope that that number will be less, but don't want to underestimate it at the front end. So the pitch that I would make here is that first, I continue to be amazed at how many people don't know where Breakneck Hill is, frankly. And so I have, first slide is a map that says, here's where it is. It has a picture of the 88 acres and a much smaller picture of the 1 or 2 acres of the farm dump site there. And then second, to simply replay that here's where we are with the administrative consent order, and the article is to approve the debt basically for that spend that'll happen over the next year or two here as that cleanup process works. And then I've got 4 or 5 backup slides should people raise questions. There's more detail of the history of how we got here, and one question that people always ask is, let's go after the perpetrators and throw them in jail and extract money from them. We actually looked into that 15 or 20 years ago, and it turned out that there wasn't enough there to actually spend the money on doing it, unfortunately. So, again, I'm happy to talk about more details as people raise questions. We'll have our licensed site professional at town meeting as well to get into the technical piece if somebody really wants to drive in on it. But as far as I know, there is not a lot of questioning or comments on this. I've talked with a variety of people about it, and for the most part, people aren't very aware of what's going on here. So my bottom line is, worst case here, we spent about $225,000 on this property back in the early 80s. And if we wind up spending another $2.2 million for this, which is again the worst case, for $2.5 million, if you told me I could buy 88 acres of property like this, I'd take it in a heartbeat. So it's going to be better than that, I think, and hope. But I think, again, we don't have a lot of choice, and let's get it done and put it to rest. It's been sort of lingering out there for a long time. This, I think, should reach closure on it. So unfortunate, but here's a way to get it finished and move forward.
All right, so I'll start this one. So I think it's an excellent presentation, but I'm still quibbling over the date. Will you just double check that
I'll
date?
double check
And
the
the reason
date.
I'm quibbling is because I lived there. John Butler and I lived on Davis Road. We're the only two there.
Yep.
Ray Davis was operating that farm, and we moved in 89 and 90, respectively. So I'm just surprised. My daughter, we go down to see the cows every day.
Yep.
So I'm just surprised it's 80. And can you clarify, when you say we borrowed for 225, I thought we took it as a tax lien.
Tax lien. I actually asked that. Melissa Danda went back and looked at the acquisition records, she told me, and that was the number, 225.
All right, so maybe we just struck a deal with Ray
Yeah.
Davis because he couldn't pay, and so we
Yeah.
said, okay,
I think
whatever.
clearly
I'm not sure it matters.
that was a bargain price for 88 acres and so.
Well, 225 for sure.
Yeah, so I'm sure there were other tax lien out there, as I understand it.
Yeah.
But again, I will confirm the date with Melissa again.
All right, I'm not sure anybody's going to quibble about
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
And even if it's, a few years off, that's not the point here.
So have you talked to Mr. Geyer about
have.
your presentation as far as what you're going to say to understand what he?
Not about the presentation, but I've talked with him about the concept, and so I'm hopeful that he will be okay with the presentation.
I hope so, too. All right, Andrew?
Sam, I thought it was an excellent presentation, very informative, and also because I moved to Southborough in 2013, so I remember the history of
For the cows.
the cows, and then not the cows. So this was very informative to understand the historical background of how we got here. Thanks. And I agree, the basic, we have to do this.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's no necessarily convenient time to do it, but it needs to be done at some point.
Well, not only that, we've got to do it now. We can tell the audience we tried to postpone it, but we can't. There's nothing, we can't postpone it.
We've got the
Unless there's some
timeline
type of
and the
force
consent order.
majeure, and doesn't wanting to postpone it is not force
Yep.
majeure, so.
Yep.
Anyway, Lisa?
Thank you. Sam, I think you did a great job on this.
Melissa did, actually.
It was the history especially, I'll tell you, out of all of the pages, and I had said this to you prior, I think the history page is one that I think will resonate with a lot of people. It answers a lot of questions about how and when, and I think we've got a lot of, obviously, new people in town since the 80s when,
Yep.
when the town acquired this. So if this isn't on the town website somewhere, maybe will be through the clerk's office, but I think at the very least, the Board of Selectmen should put this on there. I think.
The presentation?
The presentation, I do. I think it answers a lot of questions, and there are people that do have questions about it that didn't live here during that time. So, again, Sam, I think this was really great, and every question I had you answered, so,
Good.
thank you.
Thank you.
I agree. Chelsea?
I agree as well. I think this was very informative. So nice job, Sam and Melissa. Sam, if you can just emphasize here during your presentation that this has been something that has been a long time coming, and that this will rectify the issues, and we won't be coming back for more funding to do anything here.
Okay, will do, thank you.
Good point. All right, I think it's great, I'm fine, so,
I should advertise if anybody wants a buried farm tractor, there may be one available.
yeah, yeah. So have you sent the presentation to Paul?
I sent it to Jay
Jay?
and
Okay.
Hassan, yeah.
Okay, all right, so,
So we'll make sure that these, I was just, Jim and I were motioning at each other, so I'll make sure that it's not up right now, but any of the ones that we talk about this evening, we'll make sure that those are put up so that that information's available.
Good.
all right, and make sure what you want to put, if you've got some backups, you may not want, whatever you want up.
I put the whole thing that's in the packet up. The packet's already out there now, so
Okay.
what is in the packet is all that I would ever expect to
Sure.
use here.
Okay.
Hopefully, if things go quickly and smoothly, I'd use the first, 3 or 4 slides there, and that's it.
All right, so Hopkinton, Mr. Butler is here now. Have you brought him over? He's there? Hey, John.
I'm unmuted. Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay, so I'm not sure how you're proceeding. I missed the first part of your meeting. Do you want to go through the presentation, or have you had a chance to look it over and have questions? How would you want to? how do you want to-
Everybody's looked it over, and there are a few questions. I'm going to start with Lisa. She's got 3 questions.
Great.
Okay.
Hi, John, thank you for coming
Hi.
tonight. Hopefully they're easy questions for you. Under the planned construction, can you talk about how the 3 projects that are mentioned came about? I mean, I know Capital hasn't commented on these. Can you just tell me where those came from?
The plan, so this is slide 10 you're referring to
Yes,
primarily?
I'm sorry, I should have said that, yes.
Okay, so there are 2 major bullets on that slide if you're looking at it. The first one says water system expansion in Southborough, current preliminary design. Everything that's listed under that section is required to meet the needs of the system after we are going to be delivering water to Hopkinton. The things that are listed under the unrelated improvements are the items that were identified jointly by Karen Galligan and Tim Tees at PAR as the priorities for other work that we would want to do anyway. So now I go into the specifics underneath each of those if you would like. What would you like? What else can I do for you?
Well, John, I was just asking where they came from. I wasn't sure.
Well, the ones in the top section essentially came from PAR, and they were listed as far back as June, with the possible exception of the removal of the Oak Hill Road of the overlook tank. That was added later. But all of those came about as a result of saying, okay, so simulating the system and saying, okay, suppose we need to deliver 2.7 million gallons per day to Hopkinton. What things in our system need to be beefed up in order for that to work successfully? And that work was done before the June meeting with the select board, at which PAR and Hopkinton kicked this off, June of 22. So those things have all been there since then. The one that was added later was removing the Overlook Drive water tank. That was uncertain as recently as 90 days ago, but Tim Tees tells me last week, verified, they definitely are planning on removing that tank.
So, John, I'm going to speak for Lisa for a second. I think what her concern is not
Okay.
the stuff above unrelated, it's she just wants to be clear that Capital would have to vet those 3 projects, and they haven't, so maybe put Capital, CIPC.
The one under the unrelated
Yeah,
improvements?
so maybe just put a footnote or an asterisk and say, to be
Sure.
approved by Capital.
Yeah, that's fine. Those are the ones that you recall the history of this is that in the late fall, we met and it was decided to ask for $1 million in funding. Karen Galligan was asked to identify what those would be, and they were identified then in conjunction with Mr. Tees, and they've sort of swum along to this point now, and as things that we would be prioritizing next to do within the water system. But they are going to require, for example, some easements. So there's process to go through yet ahead of us for these so-called unrelated improvements.
Okay. So, thank you. And then just a question on the map, John. I know one of the things that we've been talking about and looking to get was what roads are actually going to be impacted, so we know how the citizens of
Yes.
Southborough may be impacted. So,
Yes, I'm planning to bring my laser pointer. The dark blue line that you see with the arrow at the bottom of the map, which says 2,066, that's a little font's a little small for me to read here right now, but 2,000 feet thereabouts of pipe at the intersection of, it's basically at the intersection of 85 and Southville Road and along Southville Road a little bit there. That's one of them. And the other is the same dark blue line where it says 2,000 feet water main Parkerville Road south of Route 9. It's Route 9 to just beyond, or just before the Mount Vickery or Middle Road it is there. Middle Road, just north of the Middle Road intersection. And that's the road that's going to be dug up for the projects that we spoke about on the previous slide as necessary to support Hopkinton. The other projects, which are more in the planning stage, the ones we spoke about as the unrelated improvements, those I don't have the roads for those, and they're just not approved yet. They're what we will probably do, or what Karen would have, if she were here, would be asking to do with the $1 million.
okay, thank you, because I just wanted to be clear, because I know that's one of the things that a lot of people have asked about.
Absolutely.
So I think actually that's great, that it's a heck of a lot less than I thought it was going to be.
Well,
So-
that's true, but unfortunately, they're not, it's not in low traffic locations. You know, the fact of the matter is that, you know, they're a bit disruptive. They say they'll try to keep the openings and the traffic flowing, openings brief and the traffic flowing. That's
Okay.
where they're.
Thank you. And just, I have one final question on the article itself. The Article 25 talks about, costs incurred for peer review of the engineering and design, but under the summary, it actually says funding of an independent audit. So I had a question from somebody on that today, saying, are we doing a peer review, or are we doing an audit, or is potentially the language incorrect? So John, if you could just.
The two terms seem to have been used interchangeably. I'm not sure who prefers which term, but they mean exactly the same thing. We're going to have and there's only one thing planned, which is to hire an engineering firm that is a water engineering firm, get them on board before the final design is complete, that is while it's underway, and have them work to review it independently along the way. And sometimes it's called a peer review, and sometimes it's called an engineering audit, but they're the same things.
So if that question gets asked, he'll just say what he just said.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So again, thank you, John. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so one more thing to talk about logistics. So at the meeting, Tim Tees is coming from PAR, he'll be there, and so will we think, the DPW Superintendent Karen's colleague from Hopkins.
John Westerling.
Yeah, John Westerling. So he's been invited, we think he's coming. We're trying to, narrow the time that they've got to be there. So we've got cell phone numbers to kind of say, come. So we do expect both of them to be there if there is any questions that people would like them to weigh in on. Sam?
One comment, following Lisa's comment about the additional items for the $1 million. Conceptually, I think that capital ought to look at that. On the other hand, practically speaking, if I were Hopkinton, I would say, I'll pay the $1 million for upgrades to the water system. That's what I'm buying here. So in fact, I think we might be at some risk there if we say we're going to take it and pave roads with it, or, you know, build a new Taj Mahal with it, or whatever.
There's no, so right now, in the draft contract, which is still at a relatively early stage, however, the $1 million was sort of, was the last difficult point of the identified major points in the negotiation. And I think that you're absolutely right, Sam. It has been said that this was for water system improvements. And that has been tracking along with the discussion all along. I think that if we were to try to open it up to other things, there could be a return of some challenges in that negotiation, because it is currently written into the draft agreement that these are water system improvements, total, not to exceed $1 million total. And currently, I think this has to be discussed with people, but to be completed within 5 years of the signing of the agreement. But that may not be, so that piece of it may not be set in stone. But I think if we were to try to move it at this stage off of water system improvements, I think we would be back to some resistance points.
And that has been my concern, John. So my bottom line is, I would like to be sure we get the $1 million. And if that sort of changing the disposition of that money jeopardizes that, and I think these are all, I've heard Karen and others talk about these particular projects. I think these are of significant value to the operation of our water system. So I would very much like to get these done, and this may be the best way to do it. But again, others have been closer to those discussions than I have.
Yeah, I would say that, I would say that if we were to say, let's say within the contract, that we don't want to specify it at any level, these particular changes to the Southborough water system that are listed in the unrelated area, I don't think that would encounter any objections, as long as we said that these are for water system improvements. But there didn't seem to be any, you know, it came up, it had to be brought up fairly quickly. Karen did it, it went to PAR, they talked about it, but it didn't seem as though there were many competitors for those particular projects if you were going to, for whatever next $1 million you were going to spend on the water system. So I think we could, within the context of the agreement, say, look, we don't want to say it's Mount Vickery Road and this presidential Fisher thing. And it may be advantageous for us to remove that level of specificity from the contract, but I don't think that we could remove the notion that it's water system improvements without encountering a whole new level of resistance.
He's right. So I had that conversation with the Hopkinton Select Board Chair, Amy, and that was her assistant said it's got to be water related. She didn't care which project it was, but it has to be water related, water system related.
So I think John's suggestion is a good one, to tweak the agreement, make it a little less specific, but.
We'll try to do that on the next go round.
Okay. Good, thank you.
So then just following that up then, John, I don't know if this is something that you would plan to say in your remarks or to change some of the wording in the PowerPoint, but where you've got the, you know, as you said, under plan and construction, there's two different categories. The ones at the top, even though it says current preliminary design, these are kind of essential, they kind of are written in stone, but I think you're saying the ones under unrelated improvements, they're not necessarily written in stone. So you could even just say, of the 3 bullet points, to make clear that it's not necessarily committing to those 3 specific possible examples.
But you
They
might,
just happen to be on the list.
you might say unrelated water system improvements paid by Hopkinton, such as.
Yeah, I'll see if I can push, yeah, that's fine. I think I can make that all clear as I speak this slide. By the way, the current preliminary design language there, I put that in because, you know, supposedly PAR is going to spend 1.5 years finalizing the design, and I didn't want to, you know, there's always changes that can come down. So even though PAR is pretty confident that this is what the list is and what's needed, we've got a lot of work to do. So it seemed prudent to say, this is where we are, folks.
And just remembering the, you know, the discussions we had from when we first talked about this was a significant thing that we were able to achieve in these negotiations. Initially, we were skeptical about whether we'd be able to get a term like this, so I definitely think that's a good selling point, and I like how your presentation is kind of a combination of, you know, appealing to just self-interest. This is a good deal for Southborough, but also, you know, it's the right thing to do, and we're being a good neighbor.
Well, thank you. I tried to balance those things because that's basically what I felt.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly right. And, you know, I think people want to do the right thing.
I think so too, I think so too, the majority will, so I think that this, I hope this one goes well.
And-
So the plan is, everyone is, John and I go to the stage together, I do a brief intro of how we got there, introduce him, and then he takes it from there as far as this goes. I'll make the motion when I first get up there, and then we see how it goes. It's a 50, you know, it's a majority vote, it's not 2/3.
Does Chelsea have any?
Oh, it's fine. I always do.
I should mention one other thing in terms of your reviewing the slides. There are 2 slides at the end, which I do not plan to present unless I get, you know, challenged about rainfall under conditions of global warming. I have a slide that talks about that. And there's another slide which has the photograph of the balloon floating over the Oak Hill Tower, that in case people ask, what's that going to look like? So otherwise, I'm not going to present those last 2 slides unless we get, you know, some questioning on those topics.
All right, Chelsea?
Thank you. Thanks, John, and thanks for coming. Do we have a draft of the IMA? I guess I didn't
Yes.
realize that the projects were, sorry, does the board have a draft?
No.
I missed it. Does anyone know?
I can't
Is it-
answer I don't know what the distribution has been. There is a draft. Essentially, Hopkinton generated a draft. Hopkinton's town council, I should say. They generated a draft. They sent it to us. And at that point, they were not offering the $1 million. They were offering we had asked for $1 million. They were offering $250,000. And then
Okay.
Kathy went back and said, hey, this isn't going to cut it. And they changed their initial draft to make it say 1 million because they basically agreed to that. I will tell you that their town council had very, very little input from anybody like John Westerling, the DPW chief. And so it's way off with regard to how this thing works from a sort of the technical side of the IMA. Its content is that in this first draft is way off base, but it's not stuff that was likely to be difficult to clear up. It's just, you know, it says we're selling them the water. Well, that's just not what's happening. MWRA is billing them for the water. So it didn't get a lot of input from the engineering side before it was drafted, but the business terms seem to all be, the big business terms seem to all be there. It's just at a very early stage from the point of view of reflecting the reality of the engineering.
So Chelsea, I just didn't think it was ready for prime time because there are some things that should have been changed but weren't, like what John just said. So I'm happy to distribute it so you can take a look at it, but there's going to be changes to it before you really.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd kind of recommend, you can have it if you want, but it has a lot of stuff wrong in it. I would kind of recommend you take the next draft.
I don't want to see it till it gets better myself.
Yeah, that's what I would recommend, but if you want it, you can have it.
Well, the reason why I'm asking is because I didn't realize that the $1 million was only going to be towards water. I didn't realize that was in the agreement. So I would like to see the draft if it's available. I understand it's still a work in progress, but I do think there's value in the board seeing it.
Sure.
And,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
oh, go ahead, sorry, because
Okay.
you can't see.
My second question is, John, do you know if this gets approved at town meeting, what the timing of this will be and when roads
Well,
would get dug up?
yeah, well, so it's really rough because, so there's a year and a half of design. That's, PAR feels as though it's going to take them a year and a half from, so Hopkinton has approved, so where we are from a money viewpoint is Hopkinton has approved the design money. So as soon as they're confident to spend it, which I think will be promptly after our town meeting, they will give the go-ahead for design work to PAR. And PAR thinks it's an 18-month design work. During that time, they have to apply to DEP and MWRA for approvals for both of those agencies. And it's somewhat hard to predict how long those will take. MWRA wants this, but DEP is an entirely different kettle of fish. Will approve it, but how long it will take is hard to say. So, I would say at the optimistic end of this, it might be wrapping up in 3 to 4 years, all done. And that might, if you back off, it might be 2 years from now that the roads are being dug. But it's really it's really hard to say right now because of those approvals and how long they're going to take.
Okay, and
It's
can you
years.
remind me from a Hopkinton perspective, what they have approved for funding for this?
For this, they've approved, I think the number was 1.5 million. And they've spent some on that, a little bit on that now. But most of that is still being held in the warrant that was approved a year ago at their town meeting a year ago. It's being held because they didn't want to spend, serious design money until they knew they could get it.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So, and do you know if they have a article on their warrant for, to be prepared if we approve this to allocate $1 million for us?
Yeah, so my sense is that, I don't know the answer to that. So their meeting is much later, okay? And so
Right.
I'm not sure their warrant is finalized as of right now. I suspect it is not, given the timing.
Yeah.
They did plan to be able to pay the 200 of the audit money out of the design money. So they were prepared to spend that right away. But I don't know whether they're going to go for construction money or this 1 million in the first go.
So it's my
So what kind
understanding, Chelsea, let me
sorry.
add something that might help understand where they may be going. I think, John, didn't they previously approve the, what they thought was the entrance fee to the MWRA system, the $10 million?
No, that was just in the plan.
Okay, so they never approved it.
No, they approved the plan, but town meeting didn't appropriate the money.
Okay, and now they don't need to pay that.
No. So originally, the total budget for this, when I started this, I basically went through all of the Hopkinton planning documents on this back in July. And Hopkinton planned this at the $25 million level. That included $12 million that they thought that they were going to need to spend with MWRA to get MWRA to allow them to use their water. And MWRA, as of right now, is saying that they're waiving that, and Hopkinton has to get into the waiver section, or the waiver time slot in order, but that is every reason to believe that can happen. The 25 million was the planning number. They have only appropriated $1.5 million roughly as of now.
So what happens if their town meeting does not approve the $1 million for us? What is built into protect us?
It's a good question. So the way these IMAs work is that an obligation entered into with another town in an IMA is enforceable without the appropriation of a town meeting. So if they sign this agreement saying they're going to pay us $1 million, And the thing is, there isn't, and some early exit clause isn't used or something like that, which has yet to be negotiated. But assuming that that they sign it, we're going forward, they owe us the $1 million whether their town meeting appropriates it or not. I think that would be subject to our town council review, but that's the basic law of IMAs, is that you can enter into them, and so the reason for that is, it's like debt. It's like, so entering an IMA, obligations under an IMA to the other town. Those obligations are obligations that, just like later payments on debt, a town meeting appropriates debt payments, but if it doesn't, it has to get paid anyway. It's the same thing.
Right.
With this.
Okay. All right, thanks, John. And my last question is, I see that there was a balloon test for the Oak Hill tank.
It's not a test, it's just a sighting, what does it look like? All right.
Right, so, was there any notification to abutters to see that test? And did you get any feedback from that?
Well, yes, so interestingly, I don't know if Oak Hill Road, there's a photograph. You go to the very last slide, there's a photograph there. That photograph is taken from Mr. Pfaff's property, Andrew Pfaff's property, who was notified and was there and observed it. I cut out indications of his property when I put the slide together, but, so there was some, it was a wider photograph, but I made it just show that, because I wasn't planning on saying whose property it was, but he's
Sure.
yeah. In any case, he observed it, he was there. It is not visible from any other parcels. That balloon is not visible from anywhere else, so it's unclear I don't know whether other abutters, what other abutters were told about it, but it was not visible anywhere else, and certainly he was. It's right next to his property, however.
Okay, those are all my questions. Thanks for your time on this, John.
Sure. By the way, I will mention, since you talk about abutters, I have not been tracking. I did ask back in the fall, Ms. Galligan, whether board approvals were required for this construction. We're going up another 20 feet, and it's not my topic, but I never got an answer to the question, a clear answer to the question. Does planning board or anybody else have to approve this tower? I don't know.
Well, we've got two ex-ZBA members sitting here.
I would guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I raised the question in the fall, and Karen, of course, this is before I knew Karen was going to be gone, and she was going to, handle it, and with Mr. Purple, but I don't know where that issue stands right now.
I mean, I can remember, for example.
Height variance.
Yeah, height variance. So for example, when the ZBA approved a height variance for the lights at the tennis courts, I remember that.
Yep.
And also for the baseball field at Mooney Field.
Those aren't utilities, though. Utilities may be in a different category. I just don't know. I raised the issue.
I don't know off the top of my head either, but also, I remember when the new public safety complex came in and there was a sign, there, I remember some type of a sign permit.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that public facilities are not exempt. There was a big flap during the zoning advisory committee thing where there was a proposal to exempt town facilities from zoning requirements, and that got turned down, and then the Zach thing didn't fly either. But so it's my understanding that we've got to get a permit for that.
Well, I think you're correct, because the examples that I'm showing would not have happened if public property was exempt from it, but, to Mr. Butler's point, is there some category of a utility that is exempt from it? I don't know. You'd have to look
I
at
don't
that.
think so, but I certainly am not, I never researched it. I raised the issue with Karen, and then, 2 months later, she was gone, so I don't know.
So obviously, 1 to be determined.
Yeah,
Can I
okay, I
add
just
one-
wanted to flag it since Ms. Malinowski mentioned, the butters, and that's the normal, that they're involved in the process that way. But anyway, that's where we are.
So Mr. Purple just raised his hand to check on that one.
Can I offer a suggestion for the board to consider going forward? Seeing as it's going to take 18 months to go through the design process, these pictures were taken, clearly there's leaves on the trees. Yeah, if I was in a butter, I would be interested in having a balloon done when there's not. It might actually make a difference. Maybe it won't. But that's just something for the board through the next 18 months that might be something you want to consider. Thank you.
Andrew?
One last question, and it relates to some things we've been talking about on slide 5. John, where it says, your vote today, you should vote for this appropriation if you think the whole project should go forward. I think some people could read that as, suggesting that, okay, where there's not a completed IMA yet, how can I know whether or not I support the whole project? I think that a vote for the appropriation is you think that the idea of the project, the concept of the project should go forward, because we would never do this unless we got an independent review of the preliminary design of the capacity improvements to Southborough. But there will be some further details, including, for example, which unrelated water system improvements would be selected. So I'm curious what you thought of that.
And if we get a final IMA that's acceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you have a
Yeah,
final
so
IMA, we've legally obligated ourselves, and so then town meeting doesn't have a say-so. And so we're trying to give town meeting a say-so in this,
Yeah,
and this was.
the way
what we're doing.
you vote no if you say, hey, wait, this whole idea of connecting to
Well-
Hopkinton under these conditions, I want to hear, I think this is really like you've heard enough about the basic outlines of the terms under which we would do this, where, again, I think one of, the terms are pretty good, right? Hopkinton pays for all of the improvements that are required for this, curb to curb.
Well, not only
plus-
that, we have a much better water system after these improvements. Much
The
better.
elimination of the 2 zones.
And, I mean,
So,
And getting rid of
so
the tape
I
envelope?
would point out, Andrew, that there is a slide 12, which is key terms of the agreement. And at that one, I would basically say, this is not, the deal isn't signed yet. It's not ready to be signed yet. We've agreed on the major points in drafts that have gone back and forth. But, we're at a point now which we need town meeting approval. We want town meeting approval, but it's not done yet. And then it'll have more latches to get through later, because, as you say, the design review, what we wrote into the terms that we discussed back in the fall that I presented to you as we need to have these in the contract is that if the auditor comes back and says, this is never going to work, for some reason, and we believe it, then we have to have an exit from this thing because there's not an engineering consensus that the project can go forward. That has to be allowed, at least as a formal possibility. Otherwise, the audit is meaningless.
So that's to my point. I was thinking that, I'm curious, what do you think?
Yeah,
If you just took the
yeah,
word
I
whole
think
out
that-
of,
I think I have to make it clear, now I can take the word whole out of there, but I think I have to make it clear that, there are gonna be many steps here, before the water flows. And a number of them are key. One is the contract's not done yet. The other is the design's not done yet. And both of those are big things that have to get finished successfully before everything is done. But right now, what we need is we're gonna tell town meeting about this whole picture, and we're seeking approval for an appropriation that is for us only. The reason why, the way this is structured, the reason why it does require an appropriation is that it doesn't make sense really to have the audit be an obligation of us to Hopkinton under the agreement. It could be done, but it's not the normal way to do it. We're doing the audit because to satisfy us that this design is good. And to do that and pay for it ourselves, we need an appropriation. But so I will make the point that, we're at a point which we're seeking your approval, but, you know, there's going to be quite a few more things. It's going to take some years for this all to be done. And if you're more comfortable, I can take the word whole out if they'll let me.
Sorry to wordsmith, it's just,
No, that's
that
okay.
word
It's
gets to a
fine.
big point.
It's fine, it's fine. But I had planned to say, here's where we are in this key terms of the agreement. I had planned to say, here's where we are right now with regard to this. You know, I don't think it's likely the deal's gonna fall apart, but, you know, you have to, you can't just say it's done until it's done, you know?
Andrew? So what do you want me to do?
You're talking about the word whole or not?
I'll take it out.
I just think take it out.
I'll take it out, Andrew, I get it. I'll take it out.
And again, great job on the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
As always. All right, so we haven't voted on this, so we need to vote on it. No, we have not. We have not. We have not, which we realized tonight. Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to support Article 25, the $200K to do the design audit of the Hopkinton water connection.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, Andrew, roll call vote.
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Chelsea?
Aye.
Cook is aye, 5-0. Okay. So it'll be on the screen. All right.
Okay, great,
Thank you,
folks.
John. Thank you.
All right, yep, good
Good
night.
night. All right, where are we? Okay, so we're almost done. Okay, let's talk about the motions themselves. So we've got the motions that Mark distributed today for everyone. Now, this includes the motions for articles that are going to be on the consent agenda, which we'll know, I think we know, there's 12 or 14 of them. You know, it's Mr. Semino's call, right? But Mark has suggested to him which ones should be, which could be. So you won't be doing all the articles that are on here because some of these are going to be on the consent agenda. And you just did them in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, I've got it here.
Okay, but, Lisa, you want to make your suggestions as far as two that you believe should be changed?
Yes, please.
First, who's doing the motion?
Thank you. So Article 27 is for the Tree Maintenance Fund. Ms. Malinowski has spent an awful lot of time working with Ms. Latrell from the Planning Board on that. So it would make sense for her to take that article because I would just defer to her to answer any questions there may be on that. And my suggestion would be to change Chelsea as well from Article 25 for the Hopkinton Water. And I would imagine, Ms. Cook, you've put a lot of work into that. It would make sense that you do that as well.
Anybody disagree with those two suggestions?
Nope.
Okay,
Fine with me.
okay. Got it, Mark? 25, 26, okay. All right, any other questions on the actual motions themselves? You know, the one that's complicated, Sam, you've got the complicated one, which is 12. So the park is, a three-part motion?
Thank
So-
you.
So then how was this work about, from prior experience, I thought the person who makes the motion is then the person that's going to make the presentation about?
Typically, yeah, but I had a question about that myself.
Well, I could do it, I'm going to be doing the
I
presentation.
thought
right?
the person, yeah, who does
Yeah,
the,
so I'm happy to do it. I mean, Mark just did this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah, okay.
without
Oh,
thinking
okay.
about who's doing. So I can do the
Okay.
presentation. And what I'm going to do after the presentation, remember, I'm doing it, then Marguerite's going to do the actual conceptual plan, right? Hopefully on a high note. And then we'll turn it over to Mr. Semino to basically explain how he's going to do the motions,
okay,
right? And then I can make it, but he's going to explain to the hall what's going on as far as how these motions are split like this,
okay.
okay?
And to that same point, I'm listed in this handout for Article 9, you were listed.
Well, then you should do 9.
Which I
Yeah,
think I
okay,
oughta-
so
Yeah.
Sam should do 9, you're
Yeah,
right, good
yeah.
point, and I should do 12
Yep.
Yeah.
and 13.
And there was one more back here that I was looking at.
You're going to do 13?
Well, so Andrew, my presentation says I'm talking about Articles 12 and 13 at the same time
Yeah.
because they're
Yep.
related, right? So I go right into the cost of the park, right? What the 250 means, what it would cost to somehow try to put it back together again, Humpty Dumpty, put it back together again. So I'm not trying to steal your thunder here. If you want to do.
No, I think that you are more expert than I at the exact details about, the key, how the 250 number came about and looking at the the agreement with the bid from E.H. Perkins and how the 250 was the cost of the above the park component of this particular part of it. I then just noticed, you know, I don't think I have a lot of ones that aren't just already on the consent agenda, so I will just offer to help out.
Well, why don't you do the budget one, the important one, instead of Sam? Or do the, when you're doing the water budget, so that's, that's a real
Yeah,
one.
that's fine.
That's a real one.
So sorry, just to make sure I'm keeping up. So Ms. Cook will have 12 and 13, Mr. Stivers will have 9.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Mark, did you get
Stivers will have
the Chelsea?
12. Oh, no, I got, yeah, I got the ones you made. Yep, nope, those are all set.
Yep.
Thank you.
So Andrew, do you feel left out here?
No, I don't.
Because we can switch them around.
I had another question. On 28 and 29, which I think are the trees and the scenic roads,
Yeah.
is that right?
Yep.
Again, I would think that Ms. Luttrell has been doing the trees historically.
She is, so that's 26.
26, okay.
So 26 is trees, 27 is the tree fund, and 28 is scenic roads.
Yes.
28 is scenic roads. What is 29 then, I think?
Concom. The
Okay.
changes.
Concom, then that ought to be,
They say no
Well,
one's coming.
It's a Select Board and
Okay, okay.
Conservation Commission article.
okay,
I've been speaking with Ms. Danza. We're not sure who's coming, if anyone, from Conservation Commission.
okay,
So she is fully prepared to speak to the
Okay.
articles in the terms of the
Okay.
detail, but in terms of the motion, I believe that
okay.
it would fall.
I'm fine with making the motion. then.
Okay.
Again, I think they're far more ready to,
Very straightforward,
detail.
very straightforward motions.
I'll try to memorize it. Okay, thank you.
And James, when we get through with all of the non-citizen petitions, you're the first up, so you'll make your motion for your voting age reduction. Okay.
Mhm.
All right?
Yep.
Everybody okay?
Good.
I have a question.
Before we
about
leave, before we leave the motions, the tree fund motion was finalized by Mr. Purple today, so can we just ask him to give an overview of where we landed on that?
Yes. Mr. Purple?
That was quite a lead-in. So the article has been a discussion, so again, I'll just kind of throw the ball back to Ms. Malinowski, that, you know, she has been doing a nice job with Ms. Luttrell, trying to put this together. The language that they came up with for the article is essentially mimicked in the motion. The issue was the funding source and trying to figure out how this worked, because there was about roughly $230,000, give or take, between the overlay, the ARPA, and the $85,000 that is carried in the tree line in the DPW budget for fiscal '23 for tree removal. And between Ms. Malinowski and Ms. Luttrell, they were looking for about $30,000 to begin this tree planting plan, survey of trees and things like that, to kind of get, set the table, so to speak, as to what we need to do, and when we look at new trees, where we should be looking to be putting them. And so, with help from Ms. McAuliffe, the town accountant, speaking with Mr. Akatib, the acting DPW superintendent, as well as the operations supervisor, Chris Leroy, the fund, the article that was done at the October 13th, 2022 special town meeting for the trees is going to be the funding source for the $30,000. And that any additional funds that would have come out of that for the tree work, the encumbrance is going to be shifted into the tree line in the DPW budget. After all is said and done with the anticipated expenses of the tree removal and the details, the article will be gone after this article is appropriated. And there's going to be about $32,000 remaining between now and June for tree work. If things come up, if things unanticipated, that type of thing, within the budget. And DPW felt pretty comfortable, you know, that was going to get them from now to the end of June. Also, and I don't want to step on Ms. Malinowski's toes, but there has been, one of the discussions, I believe, between the joint meeting between this board and planning, was the desire to try to do the tree work when there's not leaves on the trees. Well, as we noted earlier in the meeting, spring has sprung, and we want to make sure, we're just about getting outside of our window of being able to do planned tree work. So while I assume we may have more hearings and things over the next, 4 to 6 months for tree work upcoming and things that need to be addressed, there may have to be another discussion if you're looking to do them before next October, November. If we want to try to maintain what we had talked about doing, is not to address the trees, when the leaves are on them.
So Chelsea, is the 30K arbitrary, or is there something behind it as far as where it came from? Because today was the first day I saw the 30K. I'm fine with it, but where did it come from?
So it came from Ms. Luttrell, and they're looking to complete the inventory of trees. And then subsequently to that, they're looking to actually do a study on where they would be able to put new trees. So it's to get them started on the inventory, and then if they finish that, then to get started on the study.
Okay. The numbers that Mark just said make sense to me. We started off thinking it was going to be 152, and then Karen
Right.
reduced that to 110, but then Chris Leroy said, well, don't forget about the details. And so that bounced it back up, and of course, he's about done. He said first week in April they should be done. So it all works out. I think this is a good plan.
And just to be clear, it doesn't, we did all this moving around so it doesn't hit the tax rate.
Yep.
And we can, use the budget that was allocated for FY '23.
Yep. All right, everybody okay? We've already voted on this article, so there's nothing for us to do but to know that it's 30K. Okay. All right, enough of that one?
Yep. Kathy, can I back up 1 second? An interested citizen sent me a copy of the Breakneck Hill deed, which was 1980,
Okay, good. So they heard us,
$225,000,
okay.
Wow.
All right,
recorded at the Worcester County Registry of Deeds
tonight?
tonight.
Why, they heard us talking?
Yes,
Okay, all right.
that was Miss Luttrell, actually.
Okay. All right, so I guess a lot was going on that I didn't know about when I was on Davis Road. Okay. Okay, so the last one is to review the memo that I sent to everyone to try to give capital some direction on the sidewalk program that we voted on at a recent meeting. So just to recap, the ARPA committee, ARPA IDHOC committee recommended $704,000 of ARPA funds to be put into the new sidewalk bucket, new sidewalk program bucket, not repairs, but new sidewalks. So we agreed at the meeting, I think it was two meetings ago, that since we have no DPW permanent superintendent, that we would go straight to capital for this. We voted 5-0 for that. I have talked to Mr. Malinowski and shown him the memo, and he's okay with it, with one exception, which I'll describe in a minute. So before we get to what he wants to add to it, did everybody read it? And so let's go around and see what edits you want, clarifications, et cetera. And then I'll tell you what Jason said. Okay, so Andrew?
Okay, so first, I had an idea about a process you could follow to identify where new sidewalks could be built, or are you also looking for like specific recommendations of areas where?
Well, I just did this to get something on the table so we can
Sure.
discuss it. So we can do whatever you want to do this memo. I said, let's go big. Let's look at where we need sidewalks in this town. We won't be able to do them all with $704,000, but just like
Yeah.
we do with roads, we kind of know, we're going to end up with the pavement management system knowing where we're going to go next, right? So same thing with sidewalks. Let's figure out where we want to put
Yep.
sidewalks, and we won't be able to do it all at first, but we know where we're going.
Well, I mean, this is going to get a little, regional. We live in different parts of the town.
We do.
So for me, definitely the area around Richards Road, there's a sidewalk which goes from Parkerville.
Are we getting into, you're going to get into specific
Okay,
sidewalks
I mean,
tonight?
is that what you want to do,
No.
or instead of get into
No,
process?
we want capital to do that.
Okay, all right.
We want capital to come back to us with a recommendation of where we need sidewalks and in what order they recommend. We can
Yeah,
switch it around, but what order to actually do it. And this is really important. I don't want to forget this. So let me go ahead and say this. So I've talked to Carla. Remember, the rule with ARPA is you've got to commit by the end of '24, you got to spend by the end of '26. So I said, Carla, we've got to really understand what commit means. So so she knows. She actually went to a meeting recently where they were talking about ARPA and I think sidewalks. So we literally have to have accepted bids by the end of '24 to be able to comply with the ARPA rules, accepted bids. And if you were to get a bid that came in more favorable than you thought, you wouldn't be able to then use that excess for anything else. She said, I don't understand why, but let's take that at face value. So what we should do, just like they did with roads, go bigger, and then we'd have to cut back with the bid. So we know we only got 704, or whatever number we end up with to do. So we've got to make sure we've got enough being bid that's going to use up that whole bucket.
Okay, so I won't talk about any specific roads, although there
No,
are some
that's
that I'm going to
capital's
get in
job.
mind, and I won't,
Okay, Pine Hill Road, there you go. So that's my opening,
Yep.
Pine Hill Road.
Okay, there we go.
Okay,
so
there
I
you go.
think that
Okay.
an idea, you could have one objective component to it, and then, I know there was a sidewalk committee recommendation that has a list that's kind of made older by now, but
Well, they've got the hard job.
just like, so this is, ARPA money,
Yep.
and just like the ARPA committee did the survey and got some public input, I think this is something where obviously it becomes kind of like a popularity contest or a organizing, but I think that it's something that could get, this is an issue that everyone is interested in and could get something, you could do those quick little surveys and the town could advertise it. And you get, aim for a good response rate and that'll at least send some signals. So I'm thinking about you have like an objective component to it and then what's a more subjective public opinion component to it.
Yeah, so like,
Doesn't cost a lot of money
This is
to
a
do
tough
these
job for them to
surveys
do, to
either.
come back with, the unbiased, objective ordering if we're to do it.
There's
What-
there's no way to have it completely unbiased and, but this is an idea of mixing both.
Well, if they come back with recommendations that are all the roads of the people who are on Capitol, then maybe we push back a little bit. But, Jason knows what he's doing. He'll come back with a robust set of, just like they did with the roads recently. They worked hard to come up with that list of roads that are going to be paved in the spring, right? So normally this probably would have started with DPW to go to them, but we don't have a DPW head. I don't think it's fair to ask interim to do this. He doesn't know enough about this. So Capital's going to take it from the beginning and come to us with recommendations. And this memo says, go back and look at what
Yeah.
people have recommended in the past, ARPA committee, the sidewalk committee. You can start with there, but it needs to be refreshed.
Yep. Comment?
Yes, of course.
Basically, the issue for me is simply communicating that we want capital to actually do both the repair as well as the new sidewalks. And I think this does a good job of that. And I have supreme confidence in the capital committee. I think they did a great job
I
on the
do too,
roads. I think
yeah.
they'll do a good job on this one. I guess I would vote, though, for two things. One is simply a northwest and north-south and east-west spine focus for
Okay,
pedestrian
do it
traffic.
again,
North-south
okay?
spine, east-west spine to be completed through the town, basically, and then around the schools is the other high priority for me, and I think that's on their radar screen. So I look forward to the job they're going to do with this.
All right, now, this is what Jason wanted to have added. He wants to make sure they've got some money to hire outside consultants. So I added you guys haven't seen this, so if you look at the paragraph that starts with, we also ask that you not limit toward the bottom, it's like the second to last paragraph, see that one? Below that, I added, we also realize that you will probably need some outside expertise to help you. We agree and will include that cost as part of the 704K ARPA allocation. Please bring your detailed recommendation of the consultants you need forward to the select board when you're ready. Okay? All right.
Fine.
Okay. There's 25K that is on the warrant this year to be used for all kinds of consultants, so I'm sure that's going to get used for various things. So not tap that, let's just include that in the 704K, right? All right? Okay. Lisa?
So I agree with everything that's been said, other than I would caution putting too many guardrails in place for capital that allow them to, and I agree, Sam, looking at north, south, east, west connectivity is key, but I think that's something that they'll do. I just, don't want to give too many suggestions from our board. Obviously, as we've all said, all have roads that we'd like to have done. So I would just like to, as we would have done if the Public Works Planning Board, was looking at this, we would say, here you go, come back, give us your suggestions. So I would suggest that we kind of stick to that approach. I think they're going to do a great job. I think they've shown that, since they've all been together. So, thank you.
Chelsea?
Yeah, I think the letter was good. I also would not dictate how they should get information from residents. I'd let them figure that out.
So is everybody happy with the letter way it's written?
Yes.
With the addition of the paragraph I just read, okay? Because if that's the case, we'll add that and send it off to Capitol and say,
Bon voyage.
that's right, here you go. Good luck. Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Chelsea, you're okay with that?
I am, thank you.
And I should have started with, it was a very good letter.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Hagerty has some items under the town meeting piece if you want to go back.
Oh, Jim, I'm sorry, I knew, of course, that's why you're here, so, I'm sorry. So we will absolutely go right back. Okay, we're done with that one, so we're done, except for public comment, so let's go back. Come on up.
Is the mic on?
Yeah.
Great, all right, thanks for letting me come here. I'd just like to talk about some logistics for this town meeting, because it's been a while since we've had the Saturday, and there'll be some changes to the process for this versus what people are expecting. Check-in will start at noon. Voting will be the traditional way, voters holding cards, tellers counting when the moderator deems it necessary. We don't have the clickers for this town meeting. We're waiting for an updated clicker, and we hope to have that ready for the fall. So in terms of voting, it'll be the traditional way when the moderator decides to have people, the tellers do the counting, we'll have those available, okay? When the voters check in, they'll get a yellow wristband this time and a yellow voter card. Little springtime, being a little colorful this time. This is an interesting wrinkle. We're trying to get notice out to a lot of people. For the Southborough bylaws, only Southborough registered voters can attend. That is not the way Northborough runs. So we're getting the word to Northborough folks that might have an interest in the Algonquin High School, that they can't just show up. They won't be allowed in. We've gotten the word out to the school committee and other people, but I'm hoping this will help get that information out. People on the moderators, pre-approved list of visitors will get a multicolored wristband. When the town meeting recesses at 5 o'clock, we'll ask the voters to turn in that yellow card, but keep the wristband, okay? Everybody has to leave the auditorium. There's no food nor anything allowed. Everyone's got to clear on out. We're not going to have food available to the public. We've looked into that logistically and financially. We just can't do that. Voters can start checking in at 6 o'clock. We're going to do something a little different this time. There's no legal requirement that somebody coming to the second session has to check in differently. So when somebody comes in with the yellow wristband, they skip the registration, they go right to the door. We'll give them a different color card for the night. So it's going to speed up the process dramatically. If people come for the second half of the session, they'll have to go and check in. So we think that's going to cut the lines down and get people out. I'm very cognizant of the fact that the weather forecast right now has a high 90% chance of rain and a high of 39 degrees for the day. So I want to get people out of the street as quickly as possible. We've also arranged to have extra all-weather rugs at the doorway there to ensure it's safe for people. They don't track water inside and so forth, okay? The auditorium holds about 500 people. We're going to have the capacity for about another 150 in the cafeteria through iMedia.
How many in the cafeteria?
Roughly 500 in the auditorium.
Yeah.
That's if you're shoulder to shoulder, and 150 in the cafeteria. I have no idea who's going to show and why. I just didn't want to be caught in a bad spot and not be able to provide people. Some other changes we're going to have, using iMedia, we'll be broadcasting the session live on the town's YouTube channel. We will put that up on the website tonight. The link will go live at 7 o'clock. We're also making some other changes. Using iMedia, the quality of the video will be substantially better, especially in terms of the presentations. In the past, we just had a camera that zoomed in on the screen. We'll be able to take the presentations live and push that out. So it'll be as if you're sitting at a screen, you'll be able to watch it. That's all good. Sam will also be broadcasting on the government channels. Rec has babysitting in the gym, a maximum of 40 children. There's registration available off of the rec site and on the web through the town meeting page as well. We're going to have a very crowded lobby.
There'll be 20 people stationed in the lobby. By the time you consider the check-in people, the police officers, the people checking the wristbands, the Girl Scouts and the rest of it, that's an awful lot of people, plus the more than a dozen tables we have set up in there. It's a lot of space. We have to keep space open for ADA purposes and fire stuff. So people cannot linger at the tables to advocate for or against their articles. We just don't have the space. You have to keep people moving. I've explained that to all the people. Inside on those tables, I hope they don't break under the weight of everything, but anybody that has an article has the right to have something on that item. Some folks have asked to have a table outside on the awning. Perfectly okay. We'll help them accomplish that as well. We will have extra handicap spaces for a total of 10 out front. We're going to bring 6 extras to help people get into that as well. I gulp when I say this, but we're going live with Facebook ads tomorrow. All right, so that everybody in Southborough and Fayetteville zip codes will get Facebook ads related to this to try to get extra people to look at this. And I hope that, because I don't know who's going to attend and why, but one thing that really struck with us is in the last town meeting, people checked in after 11 o'clock, that they were at home watching and they only had an interest and came into that. So because we'll have the high-quality video to be live and you can watch it from your cell phone or whatever you want to do, we think that we'll have a greater not throughput, but a greater audience, a larger audience, which might bring other people in to vote on whatever they choose to vote on. We'll go from that. This summary, once I clean and work my typos, it'll go up on the website tomorrow. And I've talked to folks to be fair. I've said to committees that want to put stuff out, you can't do stuff. However, I can work with you on that item you talked about earlier. Absolutely, we can do something if you'd be okay with this. We have try your kids at volunteering, a bunch of kids helping us. What we could do is hand those out to people as they're leaving. All right, same thing. We can actually, and that's actually, you'll get a better return on your investment, in my opinion, because when people bring stuff into the hall, so much of that stuff just ends up in the trash.
know.
It just does.
I know.
And it gets lost among the 15 different things. So we can work with you on that and stay with it being still in alignment with how we're treating everybody on this. So we're in pretty good shape. I hope we have a good crowd. I hope we don't have too big a crowd, but we've only had, we should be in pretty good shape.
One thing to probably clarify when you say babysitting, the children age is 4 and up, and they have to be potty trained.
It's only for the first session.
Okay,
That's right.
that's a
Thank
good
you.
point,
Yeah.
too. Then, if you remember at the special town meeting, the reason that there was such a late flood of people is because of the interest in the flag article. This time, the last 2 articles are also going to be very interesting, so I think we're going to have a late flood of people for those 2, too, so it could be the same thing.
Yeah, and how the flow of the meeting and the timing and the discussion, I just, your guess is as good as mine. But we're prepared for this. I think we've got pretty good backup plans in place for things, and I'm looking forward to 1 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah.
But at least I'll circle back with you later on that. I think we can make it work, okay?
Thank you.
Right, thank you, folks. Oh,
Thank you, Jim.
Are you going to public comment now?
Yeah,
Can I just say something as a resident?
sure.
If you're talking about the sidewalks, there's something to be said for fixing what we have before we put new stuff in. And the sidewalks at the transfer station are unsafe. They just are. And the number 2 leading cause of death of people over 60 years old is from a fall. I'm in that category. I've had a fall. And when you look at that, it's unsafe. It really is. And I don't know how to fix that or budget or whatever the deal is, but it should be addressed.
So
Say-
that's part of their charge, just so you know, is to also propose a program of repairing sidewalks. The ARPA money, though, was specifically designed for new sidewalks, so we're going to stick with that, right? But then we've got some money already in an article, plus we're adding money in this warrant to the sidewalk repair program. It's going to have about $100K to start out with.
I'm talking specifically about the sidewalk in front of the recycling areas. It's uneven, there's cuts and stuff. And I personally have tripped and fell forward against those metal containers.
I've seen people trip there as well,
Yeah.
so
I don't know what
and
to
that's-
fix. I don't think it's a real big
that's
deal.
not too hard to fix, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so just throw that out there. It's worth
Yep.
fixing and,
Yep.
thank you very
And
much.
to clarify your statement, Mr. Hager, I think we all look forward to 11:30 PM on Saturday.
I'd go for 10:30.
Yeah, really. I'm sorry, I forgot to call you up here when we got to that. So, my
I
fault.
wish to speak in public comment, please.
Yes, we're getting to you.
Okay.
Thank you, appreciate it, Jim.
All right, so, public comment, Mr. Perry.
Okay, first of all, you didn't not keep the clerk to 3 minutes, did you? You've kept me to 3 minutes every time I've spoken. You did not keep him to 3 minutes. He
I
spoke for-
disagree with you. Mr. Hegarty was not here for public comment. He
Oh,
was
well,
part
you
of-
allowed him to speak under public comment, didn't you?
But it wasn't 3 minutes.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
Mr.
just
Perry.
making a point. You're not being fair. I'm going to talk about harassment of public officials running for office. This is very serious. First of all, I'm going to start with you, Chairman Cook. You went to a place of business, a Southborough place of business, Galbankian's business, and you harassed the sister of John Galbankian, not to buy her flowers, but to complain because John Galbankian had written a letter in my Southborough critical of your project. You were so angry, you had to go to her place of business and harass her. I put that on the record. John will back me on this. Number two, you have harassed
I'm just going to
me.
interrupt right there. Mr. Perry, you have your facts.
You have no right to speak. This is
Your
public
facts
comment.
are wrong.
You have no right to speak. It's public comment. It's not your comment. It's my comment.
Go ahead.
Now, number two, you have harassed me several times, officially and illegally. I received a letter from Calendar in 2017, written by that gentleman over there, Mr. Purple, for Calendar. It was an illegal letter, written by him individually, as an individual selectman. I went to the AG, the Attorney General. He said, it's not worth the paper it's written on, literally. He said, it's not worth the paper it is written on. David, you can ignore it. And I did ignore it, and nothing happened. 2023, however, Chairman Cook wrote a letter almost identical to me, obviously composed by Mr. Purple, copied from Calendar's letter, written by you, Cook, alone, as a single selectman. It was an illegal letter harassing me. It wasn't worth the paper it was written on, according to the Attorney General. It was an illegal letter. Then why? It was telling me I can't come to town hall without having a prearranged appointment. I came to town meeting because I was ignoring it. What happens? Someone calls the police because they have a letter from this gentleman here, Mr. Purple, saying Perry is not allowed in town hall without having a prearranged appointment. So they call the police, and I get escorted out of town hall by the police because of your illegal letter. Then you finally find out from the town council you're not doing the right thing, so you schedule an executive session, and that was cancelled because of a snowstorm. But in the meantime, you actually told the police, the chief of police, to call my family in Europe. And I'm going to talk about this for a minute. My family was called behind my back. I knew nothing about this until I got an email from my brother. He was intimidated and fearful. The police chief, first of all, called my niece in Southborough, right next to where I live, because I'm selling my house to her. He could have called me. I could have gone down to the police station. No, he called my niece, told her, I want the private email addresses and telephone numbers of David's daughter and brother in England. My niece was so intimidated, she handed them over because she was so fearful. She has not dared to talk to me about it since, and it's 2 weeks later. Then my daughter has to arrange a Skype international conference call with the police chief on Saturday, March 4th. And they have a Skype family conference call with the chief, and he issues orders that I am not to be informed about this meeting because he wants to lay on the family how severely I'm going to be punished and if I don't bend over backwards and obey you, which I don't have to because your letters were illegal. You know, he intimidated my family. He scared them. My brother said he's never been so intimidated in his life. He said it was a scare tactic. You know what it reminded him of? Gestapo. I'll say it right out. Gestapo. Those are exactly the tactics Gestapo used, going behind family back to family overseas, completely innocent, completely unknowing. My brother knew nothing about this project. As soon as I got his email, I knew exactly what was going on. I said to him, I wrote to him, I didn't speak to him even once, and I haven't spoken to him only once since. I said, Martin, this has to do with this illegal, corrupt project. He said, yes, David, it does, but watch out, because you're up for it. They're going to accuse you of no trespassing next. You better listen to us.
Perry, that's 3 minutes. Wrap it.
Oh, yes, and you didn't hold him to 3 minutes, did you?
Yes.
You're being unfair.
Nope.
You have broken the law, Mrs. Cook. You have broken the law,
Perry, that's
and
3
so has Calendar, and you're not allowed to speak. This is public
I
comment.
certainly am allowed to speak. I'm the chair of the select board. I most certainly am allowed to speak.
I'm done. I'm fed up with this harassment. I'm going to sue you. I'm using the same attorney as Barron versus Calendar. I'm going to sue you for damages You had me escorted out of here by the police. My God, you should be ashamed of yourselves.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote. Andrew,
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
Chelsea,
Aye.
Cook is aye.